let's get started. So a few house rules and reminders. Like I said, this webinar will be recorded. Any questions you have, please submit your questions using the Q&A button throughout the presentation. We will be responding to questions at the end of the seminar. This recording will be posted on our funding center and as well as the PowerPoint presentation. And all callers will remain muted through this presentation. Here's the link as to where the slide and the recording will be posted. This is our second info session using Zoom webinars. So it is a little different, but as you can see, there's a section for all questions received as well as your questions received. And if you want to remain anonymous, you can send us questions anonymously. So hello and welcome, Neshka.
Good morning. My name is Agnieszka Rykaczewska. I'm a manager of evaluation and learning within First 5LA's Office of Data for Action, and I am the project manager for this solicitation. Daisy?
And my name is Daisy Ortiz, and I'm the contract compliance officer for this project. So you'll get to hear from me a lot. So today's agenda seems very jam-packed, and it is. We will go briefly over what First 5LA is. We will discuss our project overview. I'll go through our eligibility and desired qualifications, as well as all required documents for this solicitation. We will go through the timeline, and as mentioned, we will have a section for all questions received, and we will attempt to answer as many as we can during our time together. If there are any questions that are not answered, we will be providing written response to all questions received during this presentation. So please refer to our timeline for dates when the answers will be posted on our funding center. About First 5LA. For those of you who are not familiar with us as an organization, First 5LA is a public agency that was established in 1998 following the passage of Prop 10 by California voters, which is a state tax on cigarettes. We are a funder, collaborator, and advocate focused on supporting children prenatal through the ages 5. We prioritize this age as it is the critical window of time, given that 90% of a child's brain is developed by the age of 5. This slide demonstrates First 5LA's refined 2020 through 2028 strategic plan and articulates our organization's North Star, which is by 2028, all children in LA County will enter kindergarten ready to succeed in school and life. This slide demonstrates the results by how we intend to reach our North Star. And on this slide, you will find our values and what we are grounding and using as guiding principles to do our work. This slide is our investment guidelines. For more information on First 5LA strategic plan, please see Appendix A of this solicitation. And now that we've done a very brief overview of what First 5LA is, my colleague Agnieszka will walk us through this project.
Thank you, Daisy. So for the next portion of this presentation, I will be providing an overview of the project, including going through our goals, the scope of work, and the terms of the project. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you, Daisy. So overarchingly, the goals of this project, oh, sorry, one more back. Sorry, Daisy. I think there might be a little bit of a delay. Could you go to the project goals? So overarchingly, the goals of this project first are to ensure that First 5LA maintains compliance with Proposition 10 reporting requirements through a timely submission of required reporting to First 5 California. So we'll go into this in a little bit in the background section, but as Daisy mentioned, we are funded through Prop 10 dollars, and that involves some reporting requirements that I'll cover in a moment. The second goal, however, is to improve the access and sharing of data related to First 5 LA's investments, reach, and impact with our staff as well as local stakeholders by generating a local data brief or some other local dissemination product. So we're not an organization that just checks the box when it comes to data. We really want to increase the impact and power of data. And so one way we are doing this through this project is ensuring that we're not only just sending the data up to the state, but also ensuring local data use. Next slide. So I'm going to provide a little bit of background given, as I mentioned, there are several different pieces moving here. So I'm going to start with the First 5 California annual report rather than the First 5 LA annual report. So the First 5 California statewide annual report is a requirement of the Prop 10 funding, or as is also known, the California Children and Families Act. And the annual report provides a statewide summary of revenues, expenditures, and populations served by every single county commission across the state of California. To do this, each county commission first reports to First 5 of California, which then aggregates the data to create the statewide summary. Which, next slide. Daisy, could you go to the, yeah, thank you. Which brings us to the First 5 LA annual report, or this project. So our First 5 LA's annual report includes data related to population served, including key demographics, fiscal revenues and expenditures, as well as evaluations completed by First 5 LA and qualitative success stories. This data is collected from First 5 LA staff as well as our grantees, and this project, one of the major components of it is to collect this data and report on it. Which brings us to the scope of work. Next slide. Thank you. So for this section of the presentation, we will provide an overview of the scope of work, and you're welcome to follow along on pages 6 through 10 of the RFQ for a more detailed description of the scope of work. Next slide. So overarchingly, the scope of work fits into 3 work streams that have several activities that fall underneath it. So the first work stream is related to implementing our annual reporting process, everything from preparation and training, collection of data, development of an annual reporting code book, all the way through the submission of the reported data to the First 5 Board of Commissioners, as well as First 5 California. So the first 8 activities will be related to this, and we'll cover them in a moment. The second work stream is related to that second goal I was talking about ensuring that we are utilizing the data locally. And so the second work stream is about the development of an LA County data dissemination product. Our initial thinking is a data brief, but we are very open to other dissemination products that may be better at having the data utilized locally. And that work stream includes collaboration with First 5 LA's communications team, as well as a partner agency for graphic design. And then finally, the third work stream is to compile a qualitative annual responses to support First 5 LA's use of stories and communication work. So as I mentioned, as part of First 5 LA's annual report, we do collect qualitative data stories. And in an effort to better utilize that data, we are hoping to have a file or product to better utilize that data in some of our communication work moving forward as well. So I'm going to go over each of the activities at a very high level. However, I just do want to remind you that if you have any questions that are either more detailed or anything about any of the activities, please put your questions in the question and answer chat, and we will make sure to respond to them at the end. Slide. So the first activity is really about orientation and learning. So this involves reviewing a lot of the documentation. First 5LA um, First 5LA just released its new strategic plan, as Daisy mentioned. First 5 California releases updated guidance every year, and we want to ensure that whoever is doing this work is oriented and has a good understanding of all of the different pieces of the annual reporting process. In addition, this also includes a required project launch meeting. Slide. The second activity is to update our reporting tools. So as I mentioned, First 5 California does release updated guidance every single year. And the point of this activity is to ensure that our reporting tools, our ways of collecting the data, is updated and aligned with that guidance. Next slide. Whereas activity 3, every single year, we provide a training to First 5LA staff so that, and to grantees, so that we can ensure that there's clarity in terms of roles and responsibilities for how this data will be collected. And so the third activity is to update our training manuals to align with First 5 California's updated guidance and to provide these training sessions. Next slide. And finally, we get to the big task of collecting the actual data from First 5LA staff and grantees. We would also just want to emphasize that as part of this task, we do expect some technical support, especially for grantees, to ensure that they have an understanding of what they should be reporting, as well as ensuring quality control of the data so that ensuring that it is complete and that to the extent possible, there's no errors in the data. Next slide. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this particular activity to give a little bit more background. So as I mentioned, each county in California has a First 5, and there is a wide diversity of work that each county does to support their local community. Now, in order to be able to capture this diversity of work, First 5 California builds in flexibility into their guidance, especially when it comes to definitions. They're very broad. So with First 5LA launching a new strategic plan, we want to ensure that we are applying this guidance consistently from year to year moving forward. And so the goal of this activity is to develop a code book that translates the First 5LA guidance and codes to the First 5LA strategic plan terms, so that moving forward, we can ensure that we are staying consistent in how we report our investments. Next slide. From there, we need to analyze the annual report data. And so this would be analyzing the quantitative data, meaning the kind of survey responsive that are more numerical, as well as reviewing the qualitative success stories for themes and developing a finalized success story or selecting a finalized success story for reporting to First 5 California. Next slide. Now that data will then need to be entered into the First 5 California state reporting system. And there are 3 components of that. There is financial component, a demographic component, and a evaluation component. And so they are referred to as AR1, AR2, and AR3. So each component will need to be filled out, and then the final report will need to be downloaded. Next activity. Now, this is the final activity under the first work stream, that annual reporting process work stream. And that is to develop presentations for our First 5 LA Board of Commissioners. We do need the Board of Commissioners to approve the annual report before we can submit it to First 5 California. And so the tasks under this activity are to develop those presentations. A First 5 LA staff individual will be presenting to the board. However, we do ask that whoever is the consultant for this project also attend and be available to answer more nuanced questions as well. Next activity. So this begins the work under the second work stream about creating a local data dissemination project. And activity 9 is really about creating the content and starts with meeting with First 5 LA staff to ensure that there's a shared understanding of what is the vision, the purpose, the content, the audience, and to develop the actual content that goes into the product. Whereas the next activity, activity 10, next slide, please. Thank you. Activity 10 is really about the look of the product and working with the First 5 LA communications team, as well as our other agency partners for graphic design, to finalize the look of the product itself, which would result in the final deliverable of an LA County data dissemination product. Next slide. So as I mentioned, there's also this work stream around ensuring that we are utilizing our qualitative data that is gathered through this process. And activity 11 is really about constructing a file for data mining by our communications team so that we can more effectively utilize our qualitative data that we gather through the annual reporting process more effectively into the future and incorporate it into our communications. And so to do that, we really need to have that data in a format that can be easily accessible as we are creating our communications. If you can, thank you. Our final activity within the scope of work is really just managing the overall project, and that does include the development of a project plan at the beginning of the project, and to ensure that it is updated and maintaining communication with the project manager at First 5 LA. All right, and I'm going to hand it back to Daisy for the terms of the project.
For the terms of the project, to start, this is a 12-month agreement, which is distinguishable from the project 2 years or 84 months, with an estimated project cost not to exceed $74,000 per year. Please note that this contract may be renewed annually at First 5 LA's sole discretion, meaning that this is not a guaranteed 7-year contract. Rather, First 5 will evaluate every year to determine whether or not this is a ongoing business. On July 1st, 2021, this project will have a fixed price deliverable budget, which more discussion to follow shortly. For the selected contractor will be responsible for furnishing all necessary personnel, materials, services, technological capabilities for efficient communication, phone and email needed to carry all tasks as outlined in section 4 of the scope of work. And finally, First 5 LA will retain sole ownership of the primary data gathered and or generated by the selected contractor during the lifetime of the project, and in consideration of all data sharing agreements for this project. Please look at the sample agreement for further information on what does that look like in contract terms. So we will now discuss the eligibility requirements and desired qualifications. I will start with the eligibility requirements. For this solicitation, proposers must meet the following requirements. Number one, you must have a minimum of 5 years of experience leading research projects, including conducting survey data collections, data cleaning and analysis, and carrying out the data reporting processes. Now, in the online application, proposers will be asked that question. Please note that that is a yes or no answer. And if you select no, you will not be able to apply. If you select yes, we are still doing level 1 review. So if the proposers do not meet the requirements, they will not advance to the next level of review. So we will have a more thorough discussion of what the levels of review are shortly, but Neshka will now discuss the desired qualifications and experience.
Thanks, Daisy. Next slide. So I'm going to start with the research experience. So obviously this is a research project gathering data. And so we are looking for experience developing and administering surveys. That is the typical reporting tool that we use with our grantees. Experience with both quantitative and qualitative data cleaning and analysis. Experience with document reviews, given how many different documents we have to review to orient even to this project, as well as experience developing and documenting code books and code definitions, again, in trying to ensure that we are going to be applying the First Five California guidance consistently as we move into our new strategic plan. In terms of research knowledge, we are looking for knowledge of equity-focused research practices. And in particular, I want to emphasize this given both our value and our investment guidelines around diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as the work within this project of the localized LA County data dissemination product. One of the key components for us in alignment with our value is to ensure that we are disaggregating the data through race, ethnicity, through geography, and any other way that we can disaggregate the data in order to elevate any disparities that may be present within our investments. We want to ensure we are aware and addressing those. In addition, we are also looking for knowledge of a systems thinking, systems change. First 5LA is a systems change agency. Our work is focused on systems change, and so we believe that it would be ideal if our consultant was familiar with this so that they could better understand our work and our investments. Given the need for research dissemination, both in terms of reporting to First Five California, in terms of reporting to our Board of Commissioners, as well as to more lay audiences and local stakeholders, we are looking for ideally a breadth of those reporting and research dissemination experiences to be able to address each of these audiences in a tailored and effective manner. Next slide. We're also looking for collaboration. In particular, this project will be working very closely with First 5LA staff, with grantees, our contractors, and so we want to ensure that we are working in a collaborative, streamlined manner, as well as we're facilitating our trainings in our virtual space. That is also something that would be ideal qualification for the consultant for this project. In terms of content knowledge, we are looking for, now again, as an ideal, the ideal candidate would have a general understanding of the context of LA County, including some of our racial inequities and issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. given that First 5 LA does work within the LA County context, and that we are looking for our LA County data dissemination product to address any disparities, and awareness of this would be ideal, of these issues, as well as a general understanding of issues that young children and families may experience in LA County. We are an organization that is focused on 0 to 5-year-olds, and I'm sorry, prenatal to 5. That is our target audience. And so understanding those issues would be ideal in terms of supporting the analysis of the data, as well as the reporting of any issues that may arise. And finally, project management. This is a rather large project. It is complex and fast moving. And so we are looking for experience successfully managing projects. Next slide. I'm handing it back to you, Daisy.
So now we're going to go through first the required documents and then walk through the selection process. The required documents are referenced in the pages 13 through 15 of the solicitation, and we discuss the selection process on pages 12 and 13 of the solicitation. So first, we have the application checklist. Applicants must submit all required documents through our online application process, which we will discuss like in the next slide. We have provided you with this Appendix F, which is an application checklist to ensure that you've provided a complete application. Omission of any document or form may constitute an incomplete proposal and may be grounds for disqualification. With the exception of one item, please no cover pages. So then we're first going to discuss the online application. Two links you should be familiar with. The first one is instructions on how to set up your account and access the online application, as well as troubleshooting, will be found on this first link. To access the online application directly, that's the second link. This is what the application looks like. As you can see, we have our eligibility question, and it is a yes or no answer. If you select yes, you will be sent to this next snapshot, which requires you to input organizational information. And you can also access, it's called the attachment links, but this is where you would submit your entire proposal packet. And as you can see, each item is one of the items requested for your proposal. For the work samples, we have 2 individual items. So work sample 1 will be submitted separately from work sample 2. That's mostly because of space capacity, and that's it. Here where you see review my application, that's actually just for you to review and see like what you're submitting to ensure that you have submitted a complete application. So the first major item is the statement of qualifications, which allows you to provide a description of how your proposed team's qualification and experience align with those qualifications discussed by Aneshka in section 6, and how these qualifications will contribute to the accomplishment of the work described in section 4, the scope of work. Additionally, we are seeking a list of 2 types of similar projects that were successfully concluded, including a short description of the work and any proposed personnel who were involved in those projects. This statement of qualifications should be a maximum of 8 pages, single-spaced, size 12 with 1-inch margins. I mean that. So if you include 9 pages, unfortunately, the 9th page will be excised. The other required document is the resumes and curricula vitae. Please include resumes or CVs for key personnel who will be exercising a major role in carrying out the work described in section 4, scope of work. Each resume should be a maximum of 3 pages. So that means if you have 5 key personnel members, you would submit 3 pages for those 5 people. So that's kind of, we're not restrictive on the key personnel type. We acknowledge that everyone is magnificent, but we only want to see 3 pages worth of content. Work samples. This is the only item that has a cover page. So we are requesting 2 samples of data briefs that demonstrates the proposer's approach and expertise. Each sample should be a maximum of 6 pages, not including the cover page. Excerpts of a longer data brief is permissible and count as 1 sample. So you can't submit 6 pages of 1-page excerpts. No, that counts as 6 samples, and we're only asking for 2. Using Appendix J, the work sample cover page, please provide a brief description of each work sample, including project background, work sample purpose, audience, and how the approach taken for said work sample may inform this project. In addition, please identify the project team members involved and specify their role in creation of the work sample. So this is what the cover pages look like. We mostly included the cover page so that you can talk about your work samples. So for the scope of work, you will be using Appendix K, which is a work sample, and refer to Section 4 for required scope of work activities. Include specific team member names in the scope of work template. Please note, proposers are encouraged to add, delete, revise, expand, and otherwise edit the activities and deliverables in the proposed scope of work to enhance the project, so long as they remain consistent with the overall project purpose, goals, and budget. Any activity timelines may be adjusted so long as the 3 non-negotiable deliverable deadlines are met. The final presentation materials for the project planning committee meeting, or PPC, that is due to September 2nd, 2021. The final presentation material for Board of Commissioners meeting due September 23rd, 2021. And the final report submission to First 5 California, which is due October 30th, 2021. As discussed in the Section 7 terms of the project, a final scope of work and budget will be negotiated with the selected contractor. So this is what the scope of work template looks like. The agreement period we're looking for is from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2022. And that is a project length of 12 months. So for the budget, you will be using Appendix L, which we are asking you to develop a budget organized by activity using the template provided. Instructions for completing the proposed budget template are included in Appendix H, which are the budget instructions. And we also added a supplemental tool to help support budget development in Appendix I. Please note that the proposed budget should include costs for deliverables produced in activities 1 through 12, as specified in Section 4, Scope of Work, as well as activities associated with any revisions to the scope of work made by the proposer. The proposed budget should be reflective of the initial 12-month agreement period from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022, and should not exceed $74,000. Travel expenses, if any, should not exceed 5% of the total project's budget. And as a reminder, final scope of work and budget will be negotiated with the selected contractor. We are also asking for a budget narrative where you will use, apologies, I meant to update that, but it is Appendix M, not LM. budget narrative to accompany your budget. This budget narrative should reflect or should justify the cost of the proposed work by supplementing the information provided in the budget and scope of work documents. The budget narrative should be a maximum of 8 pages, single-spaced, size 12 font with 1-inch margins. And mostly that's because you don't have a lot of space to justify your costs here, but you do have 8 pages to kind of explain your budget here. Now, number 8, which is the litigation and contract compliance form, Appendix N. Please read the information on this form thoroughly and include a signed copy by your proposal deadline. If you check yes to any of these 10 items, please explain the circumstances for the response and explain whether this will impact the project on the solicitation. I know it's like really small, but there's actually a part 2. Required document number 9 is a business license, which is, if applicable, if your organization has a business license, provide it to us. So now we're going to go through the selection process and review criteria, which is listed on pages 12 and 13 of the solicitation. As discussed, this solicitation has a first level of review where First 5 LA evaluates all proposals for completeness, minimum requirements. Those minimum requirements typically include timely receipt of the proposal, submission of all required documents. A tip for all of you, please make sure that your documents open before you upload them, because sometimes there are glitches. So just kind of make sure that especially if you're converting a document from a Word or Excel into PDF, make sure that your PDF works or opens. And so we check the required documents, and we review adherence to eligibility requirements. Proposals with omissions of any required documents are subject to disqualifications. We also conduct a due diligence review, which includes a review of the litigation and contract compliance form, which is why I spent a few seconds talking about that. And we review whether a proposer, current or former contractor, grantee, or vendor currently remains placed in non-compliant status by First 5 LA under any existing and past agreement with First 5 LA. If applicable, First 5 LA will evaluate past and current performance under a First 5 agreement to inform level 1 review. And First 5 LA reserves the right to request additional information if needed to validate eligibility and/or minimum requirements. Finally, First 5 LA conducts a conflict of interest review for the proposers, including any subcontractors. So level 2, proposal review. Proposers that pass level 1 will then proceed to level 2. They will use the level 2 review tool, which I will show you shortly. And this review panel will be comprised of First 5 LA staff, which will be vetted for conflict of interest and sign a conflict of interest form to certify that there are no conflicts of interest. The reviewers will participate in a calibration session prior to finalizing their scores, and proposers that score highly in level 2 will proceed to level 3. So this is what the level 2 proposal review looks like. It is Appendix E. It is shared. Please review it because it does demonstrate how your proposals will be assessed. Level 3 is the interview. And as mentioned, highly scoring submissions from level 2 will proceed to level 3. Only key personnel on the proposed RFQ can participate. please check out section 1 timeline for selection process, as those are the tentative interview dates. And they are subject to change. However, we try to keep on time because we're aware of everyone's time. So we want to make sure that you have those dates ready. The interview will be held virtually through Zoom. And similarly, the members of the interview panel will participate in a calibration session prior to finalizing their scores. Further written material may be requested prior to or after the interview, and First 5 LA requests the right to schedule additional interviews or meetings. The awarded contract will be given to proposers with the highest combined score of level 2, and level 3 will be recommended to the 5LA executive director for award of the contract. A lot of information, but now application submits. So this is all the legalese, but basically your deadline is 2021, 5 Pacific Standard. To submit all required documents will constitute an grounds for disqualification. Please don't wait last minute to submit your documents through our online application. Responsible delays proposers may encounter with the system due to multiple parties uploading before closing time. Additionally, First they shall not be liable for any costs incurred in connection with a proposer's preparation of proposal material in response to this RFQ, and any material submitted becomes First 5 LA's property and is subject to public disclosure. How to apply? Here's our link for this link is for this solicitation, and there's a section called how to apply with the 3 major steps on how to do so. Addenda. We on occasion sometimes do addendas to amend the solicitation. Please check out our website regularly to see if that happens. They are posted there, and it is the responsibility of the proposer to ensure that prior to submission, their application reflects the most recent information and RFQ requirements. So timeline. We are here. Thank you for joining us. The final date to submit questions and requests for additional information is April 23rd. We will be posting our responses to those questions on the 27th. Proposals are due on April 30th, and interviews will be June 3rd through June 8th. Please save the date. Where to find this information? Here are the links. So I see we've been receiving a lot of questions. Thank you. But if you joined us a little later, to ask us questions, click on the Q&A button, and that's kind of what it looks like. And we're going to go ahead and start answering some questions. So the first question is, are there qualitative stories referred to in stream 3 from the same data source as success stories? Nashka?
Yes, so the data collection will be once through activity 4, and the qualitative success stories that are captured in activity 4 will then be used in subsequent activities, including for the reporting to First 5 California, for the LA County data dissemination project, as well as the qualitative data file.
The next question is there a centralized database? And if so, which database is being utilized? Neshka?
Yes, so First 5 California does have a centralized database where we need to upload in order to submit the annual report to First 5 California. In terms of First 5 LA, we do not keep a centralized database. We do have the data files for all previous years, And there is a template that we use to format the file, but we do not have a centralized database that we use. Oh, and sorry, just to answer which centralized database for First Five California. First Five California has developed their own data system for this process.
The next question is, should all activities in the RFP occur in the first 12 months of the agreement? And if not, which activities are part of the first 12 months? Nushka?
All of the activities that are in the RFP will be, we are looking for them to occur within the first 12 months. And actually, Daisy, would you speak to the renewal process as well? Yes. Given that there is potential for renewal.
So as I mentioned, so we're soliciting for a time span of 7 years. However, we're assuming a lot, right? Because 7 years is a really long time, but we're contracting first for the first 12 months, and then First 5 LA will determine within those 12 months, it will determine whether or not this is an ongoing business need. At that point, that's when we start renewing for year 2, and you basically have that same assessment on year 2 to then determine, are we going to contract for year 3, and so on and so forth. So it is, but we already know, or we anticipate that this is going to be a 7-year need. However, we do the business need assessment on a yearly basis to correspond with our budget. Did that answer the question, Nushka? Okay. So next question is, could you clarify for the work sample if we're providing an excerpt and the original document is about 20 pages, as long as we include just 6 pages, is that acceptable?
Yes, so as an excerpt, you can take 6 pages from that 20-page document and that 6 pages will count as one work sample. I think that's the piece that we want to be clear about, is that we are not saying that you might have, let's say, 6 different documents and you pull 1 page out of each of them, but rather, so that would count as 6 different work samples. But if you have one larger document that you're pulling 6 pages from, that's fine. I hope that clarified.
The next question is, in the past, has this annual reporting process has been done by an external consulting firm or internally?
Traditionally, it has been done by an external consulting firm. We have had experience doing it internally as well, and that generated some great learnings. But traditionally, it has been an external consultant.
The next question is, interested to know how many presentation trainings will be needed.
We are asking for 2 trainings to be provided as part of the activity on training.
The next question is, July 1 to September 2021 is 3 months. What is expected to be included in the presentation materials? Is there an expectation that data analysis will be completed by October?
Yes, it is a very short timeline. Absolutely acknowledge that. In terms of what is expected to be included in the presentation materials, there are 3 presentations that are outlined for the planning, the PPC meeting, as well as the budget meeting. For those will be preliminary findings. So an overview of what is the programs that we have, who are we serving, and our revenues and expenditures. Just an overview of those findings. But for the first 2 meetings, those will be preliminary findings, recognizing that we will be conducting further analyses as we go along. For the Board of Commissioner meetings, meeting at the end, that third meeting, that will be the full findings that will be reported to First Five California. So it is expected that any analysis that is needed for reporting to First Five California will be completed in time to present for the Board of Commissioners. However, that said, we do anticipate that additional analyses will be needed for the data dissemination product, for example, and we do not anticipate that those analyses will need to be done in time to submit the report, that those additional analyses can occur afterwards. So to answer briefly, for the requirements for First Five California, which speaks to our revenues and expenditures, our population served, and our qualitative success stories, as well as evaluations, those pieces will need to be analyzed by the October deadline so that we can submit and remain in compliance with our Prop 10 funding requirements. Additional analyses beyond that can occur later.
For the next question, which is for budget narrative, do you want us to provide the labor by activity, by subtask, i.e. how many hours for each task, or both? So this is the slide for the corresponding budget narrative. Neshka?
Yes, so to answer, we are looking by activity. As you can tell in the template that we provided here, we are asking that it be completed by activity.
So outstanding questions, and we will either jump back on to answer the questions live, or we will provide further guidance as to how we will be providing answers to the rest of the questions. But feel free to keep asking those questions. So the next question is, how responsive have grantees been to the survey tool in the past? Are their responses a requirement of their funding?
Yeah, thanks, Daisy. That's a great question. The responsives to the annual report are a requirement of funding. It is built into our grantees contracts, and we always have a few stragglers, but we've pretty much gotten 100% response rates in the past.
The next question is, If grantees are non-responsive to requests for data, how is this handled? Would First 5LA staff get involved?
So this is one of the areas that we talked through during our training with First 5LA staff in terms of the responsibilities. So if we do ask that first, the contractor or the consultant for this project would outreach to our grantees and potentially follow up initially if there's no response. However, if there's continued no response, we would have them work with the program officer that oversees that grantee to reach out, and First 5LA staff would get involved if there's continued non-response. As I mentioned, this is a requirement of our grantees' contracts. So we would absolutely get involved if there's continued non-response.
We're going to take another brief pause to review the questions that we've. Okay, the next question is, if there is not a centralized database, is the contractor expected to compile trend data as part of the reporting, or is the reporting solely a one-year snapshot?
The reporting is solely a one-year snapshot. Now, we could explore in terms of utilizing our previous year data for the LA County data brief, but that is not something we have anticipated to date. But that would be part of the conversation around what is the content of that product. But as of right now, there is no need to compile previous years of data for this project. It would be a one-year snapshot.
The next question is there an estimated time for activities 2, 3, and 4, depending on what existing reporting tools and training materials look like? These activities could be very involved and take a large amount of time. We are considering distribution of time needs across activities and the amount of funding available.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The timelines, the estimated timelines for activities 2, 3, and 4 are included within the scope of work in appendix, hold on, let me just double check, appendix E. So there is estimated project timelines. Those are negotiable as long as Daisy mentioned previously, there are 3 non-negotiable deadlines that must be met due to First 5 California requirements. So as long as we can meet those deadlines, then we can adjust other timelines. And I also want to note that the reporting tools from last year, as well as the training materials from last fiscal year, are included as Appendix C and Appendix D. If you would like to review them to get a sense of what those materials look like right now.
The last question we're going to answer today is full findings for Board of Commissioners is due October, meaning 4 months for all analysis accounts for 4 months. For the remaining 8 months, additional analysis and brief creation is left in terms of tasks, more or less, correct?
The full findings for the Board of Commissioners is due in October. That is correct. So the analyses that are required for First 5 California reporting would be in those first 4 months. And then in terms of the remaining tasks, there will be, yes, the additional analyses and brief creation, as well as I do want to call out the qualitative data file so that we can continue to use the qualitative data within our communications work. So that is an additional piece that hadn't been called out, but that is what the one of the remaining tasks after reporting to the Board of Commissioners and submitting the required reporting to First 5 California.
We are at time, but I did want to do another plug of the final date to submit questions and requests for additional information is April 23rd. So if we log off and you're like, no question, send it my way. Here is my email address. Please send us all questions by the 23rd, and we will be posting answers, including the ones we receive, all questions received during this info session and through online, but through my email by the 27th. So if at 12:30 you're like, question, just email it to me. I'm going to post my email once more, but as I said, all of this information will be posted on our funding webpage today. So you'll have access to both the webinar and the presentation. And on behalf of First 5 LA, thank you for joining us. We're very appreciative, and we will provide this information shortly. I did see a last question that rolled in, but we will be providing a written response to that, and we'll be posting on our website. So thank you all for joining us, and have a great day.